The flashbulbs were a porcelain lie, freezing everyone in false perfection. Inside the grand hall of the New York Public Library, Amelia Hayes Thorne held her breath, a familiar performance. At 7 months pregnant, the custom-made silk gown felt like beautiful armor. Her husband, Marcus Thorne, was a gravitational force, pulling all eyes. He was donating a new wing, another monument to his name. Amelia smiled, one hand on her stomach, feeling the gentle kick of her daughter. But as Marcus's hand rested on her back, his eyes were already scanning, not for her, but for the next opportunity. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from in the comments. We'd love to know. And if powerful stories move you, hit subscribe and turn on the bell. Let's dive in. The Thorne Legacy Foundation Gala was the apex of the New York social season. It was an event Amelia herself had orchestrated, a perfect blend of old-world philanthropy and new-world power. The library's Astor Hall was transformed, bathed in deep blues and golds. The air was thick with the scent of lilies and the murmur of 1,000 conversations, each one a transaction, veiled in politeness. Amelia was the perfect host. She navigated the sea of venture capitalists, aging aristocrats, and ambitious politicians with a grace that was both innate and meticulously practiced. She came from quiet academia. Her family's name, Hayes, was synonymous with professorships and dusty libraries, not skyscrapers and hostile takeovers. Marrying Marcus had been like stepping from a rowboat into a typhoon. "Amelia, darling, you look radiant," a congresswoman gushed, her eyes flicking to Amelia's prominent stomach. "Legacy in every sense." "Thank you, Senator," Amelia murmured, her smile never faltering. "We're just so thrilled to be supporting the city's literacy programs." Marcus found her by the silent auction, his 6'4" frame parting the crowd. He was electric, his dark hair perfectly styled, his tuxedo impossibly sharp. He didn't just wear the suit, he commanded it. "Everything on schedule?" he asked, his voice a low rumble. It wasn't a question, it was a check-in. "Of course, Marcus. The mayor is seated, and the press corps is in place." "Good." He kissed her forehead, a gesture that looked intimate to the cameras but felt like a brand. His hand lingered on her back, a proprietary weight. Time for the main event. He led her to the head table, set on a dais overlooking the hall. As he ascended the steps to the podium, a hush fell. The lights dimmed, save for a single, brilliant spotlight that found him. "Thank you," he began, his voice resonant, filling the cavernous space. "We are here tonight not just to celebrate history, but to make it." Amelia watched him, a familiar, dull ache in her chest. She had loved him once. She had believed in the charming, brilliant man who had pursued her, who had claimed to be dazzled by her quiet integrity. Now she knew she was just another asset, the most valuable one, the one that gave his shark's tooth reputation a veneer of class. He was deep into his speech about building bridges to the future when a figure emerged from the shadows near the side stage. A woman. Impossibly beautiful, in a crimson dress that clung to her like a second skin. She was not on any guest list Amelia had approved. She moved with a panther's confidence, walking directly toward the podium. Security, so used to the placid flow of the gala, reacted a half-second too late. "Marcus," the woman's voice was clear, cutting through the silence. Marcus froze. The well-practiced rhythm of his speech shattered. He turned, his face a mask of confusion. Then, recognition. A flicker of sheer panic. "Sienna," he breathed, the microphone catching the name. The woman, Sienna, didn't stop. She reached the podium, took one look at the stunned audience, and then turned back to Marcus. With a predatory grace, She cupped his face in her hands and kissed him. It wasn't a peck. It was a deep, violating kiss. A claim. The room audibly gasped. The thwack, thwack, thwack of paparazzi cameras exploded, a volley of flashbulbs illuminating the scene in grotesque, repeating detail. Marcus finally shoved her away. "What the hell are you doing?" he hissed, his face pale with fury. Sienna Jensen just smiled, her red lipstick immaculate. "Just claiming what's mine, darling." Every single eye in the room, over 500 of them, swiveled from the stage, past the Mistress, past the Billionaire, and settled, with agonizing, hungry pity, on the pregnant wife. Amelia felt the world tilt. The blood rushed from her head, leaving a cold, metallic ringing in her ears. The baby gave a sharp, painful kick, as if sensing the impact. She could faint, she could scream, she could run. Those were the expected moves. Marcus was already turning to her, his hand outstretched, his face a mask of, "Let's manage this." "Amelia." She looked at him. She saw the lie, the carelessness, the utter disrespect. She looked at the woman, Sienna, who was watching her with a strange, triumphant defiance. And then, Amelia Hayes Thorne did the one thing no one could have predicted. She stood. Slowly, deliberately. She placed one hand on her stomach, a gesture of both protection and strength. She didn't look at her husband. She didn't look at the woman. She walked, with the straight-backed poise of her ancestors, right past them, to the main podium. The cameras followed her, the flashes unceasing. Marcus and Sienna were forgotten. Two actors left on a dark stage. Amelia tapped the microphone. The sharp thump silenced the remaining whispers. Her voice, when it came, was not a shout. It was not a sob. It was clear, calm, and cut like a scalpel. "Good evening," she said, her eyes sweeping the stunned crowd. "My husband, Marcus, has just given a very passionate display." A few nervous, choked laughs died instantly. "It proves," she continued, "what we at the Foundation have always known. That art, and indeed life, should be about passion, about what you are willing to risk for what you believe in." She paused, and for the first time, her gaze settled on Sienna. "But passion without integrity is just vandalism." She let the words hang. She could see Sienna's smirk falter. Then, Amelia turned her gaze to the press row. "Which is why I am so pleased to announce a change to tonight's program. Effective immediately, I am redirecting my entire personal contribution and the Hayes family trust from the Thorne wing." A new, more profound gasp filled the hall. She saw Marcus's face go from pale to ashen. This was not part of the PR spin. "To a new fund," Amelia concluded, her voice ringing with an authority she hadn't realized she possessed. "A fund to be managed solely by me. A fund dedicated to supporting displaced female artists and creators who have been silenced." She smiled, a small, tight, brilliant smile. "We're calling it, simply, the Hayes Foundation." "Thank you." She set the microphone down. She didn't look back. As security finally, belatedly, swarmed the stage, Amelia Hayes Thorne walked, head held high, out of the grand hall, leaving her husband, his mistress, and the entire city utterly and completely speechless. The silence in the back of the Maybach was a living thing, heavy and cold. The city lights blurred past the tinted windows, streaks of neon painting a mockery of the chaos that had just unfolded. Marcus hadn't spoken since they'd pushed through the frantic press scrum and into the sanctuary of the car. Amelia's driver, a stoic man named Thomas, navigated the streets with his eyes fixed forward, the privacy partition mercifully raised. Amelia stared at her own reflection in the dark glass. The woman looking back was a stranger, pale, pupils dilated, but with a terrifyingly calm set to her jaw. The adrenaline was a fire in her veins, holding the inevitable, crushing weight of the betrayal at bay. The elevator ride to their penthouse, a glass and steel box on the 78th floor overlooking Central Park, was just as silent. The ding as they arrived at their private landing was offensively loud. The moment the heavy oak door clicked shut behind them, the dam broke. "What?" Marcus snarled, his voice a low, dangerous growl. "In the hell did you think you were doing?" He wasn't apologetic. He wasn't ashamed. He was furious. Amelia turned to face him. She methodically placed her small clutch on the marble console table. "I believe I was clear. I was announcing a new charitable fund." "You undermined me." He ripped his bow tie off, throwing it on the floor. "You stood on my stage, in front of my donors, and you publicly castrated me." "You were publicly occupied," Amelia said, her voice still holding that unnatural, icy calm. "I merely filled the silence. That woman, that Sienna, was a crazed stalker, a lunatic. We will have the PR team release a statement in the morning. We'll have a restraining order by noon." Amelia unzipped the back of her gown, letting the silk pool around her ankles. She stood in her simple slip, the swell of her pregnancy, the only curve on her otherwise angular frame. Was she Marcus? Was she a stalker? Or was she just sloppy? Her name was on your private calendar for SJ every Tuesday and Thursday for the last 6 months. I assumed it was a sports trainer. My mistake. The blood drained from his face. The narcissistic rage was replaced by a cold, appraising flicker. He had underestimated her. "You've been checking my calendar?" "I've been running your foundation, Marcus. Your entire life is on my calendar." She walked past him, toward their bedroom wing. "You should have been more careful." "Amelia, stop." He grabbed her arm. His grip was steel. "The Hayes Foundation. That was a joke, a slip of the tongue from a hormonal, humiliated wife. You will reverse it." She looked down at his hand on her arm, then back up to his eyes. "Take your hand off me." He tightened his grip. "You will reverse it. That money is my money. It's Thorn money." "Actually," she said, not flinching, "it's not. It's from my mother's trust, the one that vests on my 30th birthday, which was last month. You'd know that if you'd ever bothered to read the prenup. Your battalion of lawyers was so keen for me to sign." He released her arm as if she'd burned him. The power dynamic, for the first time in their entire relationship, had just visibly shifted. "You will not do this," he said. But it was no longer a command. It was a plea, laced with venom. "Think of the child, Amelia. Our child. Do you want it born into a scandal?" "It's a little late for that, wouldn't you say?" She turned and walked away, locking herself not in their shared bedroom, but in the guest suite, the one with the less impressive view. Only when the heavy door was bolted did her legs give out. She slid down the door, her hands flying to her stomach as the first, ragged sob tore through her. The adrenaline fled, leaving behind a raw, gaping void. The betrayal wasn't just the kiss, it wasn't just the affair. It was the realization that the last 5 years of her life had been a performance for an audience of one, and he had never even been watching. She saw it all now, the chance meeting at the university library where her family's endowment was struggling. He'd been planning a takeover. The charming courtship, a calculated acquisition, the red flags she'd painted white. He hadn't just married her, he had leveraged her. She cried for the naive girl she had been. She cried for the life she had thought she was building. And she cried for the tiny, innocent baby inside her, who was now her only true ally in a war she had just declared. The gilded cage had never felt so cold, but as she sat on the floor, the first glimmers of a new, terrifying resolve began to form. He thought this was about humiliation. He thought she'd be bought off, managed, or shamed into submission. He was wrong. She had spent 5 years learning from the master. She knew how he thought, how he operated. He had just taught her to be ruthless. She picked up her phone. It was 3 a.m. She dialed. "Rebecca, I'm sorry to wake you. Yes, I'm fine. No, actually, I'm not. I need you to file, yes, the divorce. But not just that. I need you to hire a forensic accountant, the best one you can find. Yes, I think my husband is stealing from our foundation." 2 days later, New York was still feasting on the scandal. The Post had run the headline, "Thorn in his side," with the now infamous photo of the kiss splashed across the front page. Marcus's PR team was in overdrive, painting Sienna Jensen as an unstable former intern. They painted Amelia as the stoic, forgiving wife, a victim of a mad woman's fantasy. The narrative almost worked. Almost. Amelia was not in their penthouse. She had moved into the Stanhope Hotel, a quiet, discreet establishment on the Upper East Side, under her maiden name. From this sterile, beige command center, she began to move her pieces. Her lawyer, Rebecca Dunn, was a shark in a Chanel suit, and the forensic accountant she'd hired, a man named Mr. Karras, was a bloodhound. "He's sloppy," Karras reported on the second day, his voice a gravelly monotone over the phone. "He's arrogant. He's been moving foundation money through a series of shell LLCs, small amounts at first, to art acquisition firms, but the firms are all registered to the same P.O. box in the Cayman Islands." "Can you prove it?" Amelia asked, pacing the suite. "Give me another week." But the SEC was only one half of the puzzle. The other half was Sienna Jensen. The PR team had done too good a job. Sienna had been fired from her paralegal job. Her landlord was trying to evict her. She had, in effect, been vaporized. "I need to find her," Amelia told Rebecca. "Absolutely not," Rebecca shot back. "She's toxic. You're the victim. Let her be the villain. That's the narrative we want." "I don't care about the narrative, Rebecca. I care about the truth. Why would she do that? Why then? Why in front of me?" Against her lawyer's advice, Amelia hired a private investigator, not one of Marcus's high-priced firms, but a quiet ex-NYPD detective named Costello. Costello found her in 3 hours. "She's not in a penthouse, Ms. Hayes. She's in a 5th-floor walk-up in Astoria, Queens, and she looks like she's packing." Amelia took a car service. No driver, no security. Just her, in a pair of maternity jeans and a simple black sweater, her hair in a ponytail. She looked like any other pregnant woman, not the eye of a financial and social hurricane. She climbed the 5 flights of stairs, her breath catching. She knocked on apartment 5B. The door opened a crack. Sienna Jensen peered out. The glamorous vixen from the gala was gone. In her place was a tired-looking woman in her late 20s, her hair in a messy bun, dark circles under her eyes. She was wearing a faded NYU sweatshirt. When she saw Amelia, her eyes widened, first in fear, then in a defiant, weary anger. "Come to finish the job, or to have your husband's security throw me off the roof?" "May I come in?" Amelia asked, her voice quiet. Sienna stared at her. Then, with a sigh of defeat, she opened the door. The apartment was sparse, filled with packed boxes. "What do you want?" Sienna said, crossing her arms. "I want to know why," Amelia said. "Why would you do that? You destroyed your life for a 5-second kiss." Sienna let out a sharp, bitter laugh. "My life? My life was destroyed 20 years ago by him." Amelia frowned. "By Marcus? By Marcus Thorn. Sienna's eyes flashed with a sudden, hot fire. My name isn't Jensen, it's Gallic. My father was Robert Gallic. Does that name mean anything to you? Amelia's blood went cold. Robert Gallic. She'd seen the name in the Foundation's original charter. He was Marcus's first business partner, the co-founder of Thorne Gallic Industries. The co-founder, Marcus, systematically bankrupted, slandered, and drove to suicide. The man he bought out, for pennies on the dollar, after my father hung himself in our garage. I was 8 years old. The room spun. Amelia sat down hard on one of the packed boxes. I've spent my entire adult life working to get close to him, Sienna whispered, the anger replaced by a deep, generational pain. I went to law school. I got a job at a firm that did consulting for him. I let him notice me. I became his mistress. I thought it was the only way to get inside. Inside what? Amelia asked. His records. I was looking for the proof. The original fraudulent contract he used to steal my father's company. I've been feeding information to an investigative reporter at the Times for months. But the kiss. Why? Sienna's face crumpled. That was a mistake. That was stupid. He was ending it. He told me he was cleaning house because his wife was pregnant and he was building a real legacy. He was going to transfer me, cut off my access. I panicked. I thought if I made a public scene, if I blew it all up, his other enemies would come out. The reporter would have to publish. I thought he'd be ruined. She looked at Amelia, tears welling in her eyes. I saw the articles about you. The society wife. The ice queen. I honestly didn't think about you. The pregnancy. I saw you at that table and I just saw another one of his possessions. And I'm so sorry. I just made him a victim. I made you the victim. And I'm the monster. Amelia was silent for a long time. The story was monstrous, but it was true. It rang with the same cold, sociopathic logic she was beginning to recognize in her husband. He told me you two had an arrangement, Sienna finally choked out, that you were fine with his extracurriculars as long as he was discreet. He told me you were a stalker, Amelia replied, her voice flat. He uses us both, Sienna. You, for revenge. Me, for a shield. Amelia stood up, her mind whirring. This changed everything. The reporter, Amelia said. What did you give them? Memos, emails, nothing admissible, nothing he can't spin. The real proof, the ledger, he keeps it locked away. A hard drive. He told me once when he was drunk. My whole life is on it, he said. My real one. Where? I don't know. In his office, in the penthouse, somewhere, safe. Amelia looked at the packed boxes. He's not just a cheat, Sienna. He's a fraud. He's been stealing from the Foundation. My Foundation. Sienna's eyes widened. So, the speech, that was real. It's about to be. Amelia pulled out her phone. You're not going anywhere. Unpack your bags. You're going to come and stay at my hotel. What? Why? I'm your husband's mistress. No, you're the daughter of his first victim, and I'm his last. Amelia's voice was grim. He's not just going to go down for adultery, Sienna. We're going to take everything. It wasn't an alliance. It wasn't friendship. It was a battlefield promotion. Two soldiers on opposite sides of a war who suddenly realized they had the same enemy. The atmosphere in Rebecca Dunn's conference room was electric with controlled fury. The room, all glass and pale wood, overlooked the financial district, a stark reminder of the world they were about to attack. Amelia sat at the head of the table. On her right was Rebecca. On her left, Mr. Karras, the accountant. And in the chair by the door, nursing a cup of coffee, sat a very nervous Sienna Gallic. "Let's summarize," Rebecca said, clicking a pen. "Mr. Karras, you've confirmed that Marcus Thorne has been using the Thorne Legacy Foundation as his personal piggy bank, correct?" "That's a polite way of putting it," Karras grunted. He slapped a thick binder on the table. "He's siphoned $4.2 million over the last 2 years, funneled through shell companies, all owned by him, under the guise of art restoration and acquisition. He's been buying art for his own penthouse, for his office, even for his jet, and writing it off as a foundation expense. It's fraud. Plain and simple. The IRS would have a field day." "And Ms. Gallic," Rebecca continued, her gaze softening only slightly, "you allege a much older, deeper fraud. The theft of Gallic Industries." "I don't allege it," Sienna said, her voice stronger than it had been in her apartment. "He did it. He used a false debt instrument to trigger a buyout clause. My father's signature was forged. I've spent my life studying his handwriting. I know it." "The problem," Rebecca said, "is that one is a new, provable crime. The other is a 20-year-old cold case. The statute of limitations is long past. We can't prosecute him for what he did to your father, Sienna, but we can use it." "Use it how?" Amelia asked. "As narrative, as leverage. The SEC will freeze his assets for the foundation fraud. The Southern District of New York will indict him. But when this goes public, we leak the Gallic story. We show a pattern of behavior. It won't just be a white-collar crime. It will be the story of a sociopath who destroys families. Yours, Sienna, and yours, Amelia." Amelia's stomach tightened. This was no longer just a divorce. It was a demolition. The door to the conference room opened, and Rebecca's assistant leaned in. "Ms. Hayes? I'm sorry to interrupt. Mr. Thorne is on the line. He says it's urgent." Amelia's blood ran cold. She hadn't spoken to him since the night of the gala. He had been served the divorce papers at his office, and she'd been deflecting his calls, his texts, his flowers. "Put him on speaker," Amelia said. The line clicked. "Amelia." Marcus's voice filled the room, and she was disgusted by the familiar, intimate rumble. "Amelia, thank God. Darling, I know you're upset. I know I've been a fool." Sienna flinched at the word, darling. "What do you want, Marcus?" Amelia kept her voice flat. "I want you to come home. This is madness. Divorce, lawyers. You're pregnant, Amelia. You're emotional. You're not thinking clearly. These vultures," a pointed jab at Rebecca, "are taking advantage of you." It was the classic gaslight. She was emotional. She was not thinking. "I'm thinking more clearly than I have in 5 years," she said. "Are you? Are you thinking about our child? I've fixed it. The Sienna woman. I've had my team. She's been handled. She's gone. She won't bother us again." Sienna's head snapped up, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and fury. "It's just us now, Amelia," Marcus purred. "You and me, and the baby. Come home. We'll take a trip. We'll go to St. Bart's. Just call off your lawyers. This is a private matter. We can settle this between us." Amelia looked at Rebecca, who simply raised an eyebrow. She looked at Sienna, who was vibrating with rage. She looked at the binder. "He's feeling the pressure," Mr. Karras whispered. "The accountant must have noticed my inquiries. He's trying to shut it down before the walls cave in." "I'll think about it," Amelia said into the phone. "Think about it?" Marcus's voice hardened. The charm was gone. "There's nothing to think about. You are my wife. You will come home, or I will freeze every account you have. The Hayes Trust, your mother's money. It's all tied up in Thorne Holdings. You signed the papers. You thought you were so clever with that prenup? I'm the executor. You won't be able to buy a cup of coffee without my permission." The threat hung in the air, brutal and absolute. He had her. He'd used their marriage to swallow her family's legacy whole. "You're a monster," Amelia whispered. "I'm a businessman," he retorted. "And you, my love, are a very, very poorly managed asset. Come home. We'll have dinner. We'll reconcile. Tonight. 8 p.m. or 8 a.m. tomorrow. You're penniless. Your choice." He hung up. The room was silent. Amelia felt the air leave her lungs. He'd had this contingency all along. He had planned for her to leave, and he had built a cage to pull her right back in. "Well," Rebecca said, snapping her pen. "That clarifies things. He's not just a cheat. He's not just a fraud. He's a blackmailer." "He's right," Amelia said, the fight draining out of her. "I'm trapped. That prenup. He said it was to protect me." "It doesn't matter," Sienna said, standing up. Her voice was shaking, but her eyes were firm. "He's a fool. He's a narcissist. He just told us his weakness." "He just told us he has no weakness," Amelia said. "No. He told you to come home," Sienna said, a dangerous, brilliant idea forming on her face. "He wants you back in that penthouse. He's arrogant. He thinks he can charm you or bully you into submission. And he just invited you into the one place on earth that holds the final piece of the puzzle." Sienna looked at Amelia. "He mentioned a hard drive once, when he was drunk. My whole life, he called it. My real one. He keeps it in a safe, behind a painting in his study. A terrible Rothko knockoff." Amelia's head snapped up. "You're going to go to that dinner, Amelia," Sienna said. "You're going to play the broken, penitent wife. And while he's pouring himself a victory scotch, you are going to walk into that study, open that safe, and you are going to take the hard drive." "And how?" Amelia asked, her heart hammering. "Am I supposed to know the combination to his private safe?" Sienna smiled, a grim, painful smile. "Because he's a creature of habit, a creature of ego. It's the same code he uses for everything. His phone, his private jet, his intern's NDA. It's the date he closed the Gallic deal, the day he officially became a billionaire." "Otter 19 to 2001, Amelia whispered. She'd seen the date on the original charter. "Go to dinner, Amelia," Rebecca said, her voice low and steady. "Get the drive. That's the house of cards. That's the one that brings it all down." The penthouse was a stage set for a reconciliation that would never happen. Marcus had pulled out all the stops. Soft jazz played. The lights were dimmed to a warm, forgiving glow. The scent of Amelia's favorite flowers, white peonies, filled the air. A cloying, funereal smell. A private chef was at work in the kitchen. Marcus greeted her at the elevator, his face a perfect mask of contrition. He was wearing a cashmere sweater, his at-home costume. "Amelia, darling, I knew you'd see reason." He reached to embrace her, to touch her stomach. She sidestepped him, a small, elegant move. "I'm here, Marcus. Let's not pretend." His smile faltered, but he recovered. "Of course, you're right. No pretense. Just honesty. A new start." He poured her a glass of sparkling cider. "To us. To the family." She accepted the glass, her hand steady. Her heart felt like a trapped bird against her ribs. In her small, discreet handbag was a small, discreet digital recorder. Rebecca's idea. The dinner was torture. He was charming, attentive. He talked about the baby's room. He talked about his regret. He was spinning a new narrative, one where Sienna was a momentary, meaningless diversion. And Amelia's stunt at the gala was a cry for help that he, as a loving husband, had finally heard. "I've been Absent, I know, he said, reaching for her hand across the table. This brush with disaster. It's woken me up. It's you, Amelia. It's always been you. The lies were so smooth, so practiced, she could almost believe them. This was how he'd trapped her in the first place. She played her part, the wary, wounded wife. I don't know, Marcus. You've broken something. I don't know if it can be fixed. Anything can be fixed, he said, his eyes intense. Give me time. Give us time. I feel faint, she said, pressing a hand to her temple. It wasn't entirely a lie. The stress, the pregnancy, the sheer toxicity of the room was suffocating. My prenatals, I think I left them in the study. I'll get them, he said, rising. No, she said, a little too quickly. Please, I need a minute to breathe. I'll get them. He watched her, his eyes appraising. She was, after all, his pregnant wife. He was playing the doting husband. He couldn't very well deny her. Of course, darling, take your time. He settled back in his chair, a smug, patient look on his face. He'd won. She was back in his house. The rest was just negotiation. Amelia walked down the long marble hall. Her footsteps were silent. She entered his study. The room was dark, panelled in mahogany. The terrible Rothko knockoff, as Sienna had called it, hung over the fireplace. Her hands were shaking. She lifted the painting. It was lighter than she expected. Behind it, as promised, was a biometric safe, fingerprint, and a keypad. Her heart sank. He'd upgraded. She heard his phone ring in the dining room, his voice a low murmur. He was taking a call. She had seconds. She pressed her thumb to the scanner, knowing it would fail. Access denied. But she'd watched him. She'd studied him. He was arrogant. He wouldn't just use his print. He was the king. Who else would be in his inner sanctum? She pressed her thumb to the scanner. Access granted. The safe clicked open. She almost fainted in relief. He had added her print when they were first married, a gesture of total trust, to show her he had no secrets. He'd been so sure of her, so sure of his control, he'd never even thought to remove it. Inside was a stack of bearer bonds, a few passports, and a single, black, external hard drive. She grabbed the drive. She slipped it into her handbag. She closed the safe. She was fumbling with the heavy painting, trying to get it straight, when his voice came from the doorway. Feeling better? She froze. He was standing there, silhouetted against the hall light. His phone was in his hand. Yes, much, she said, her voice a strained whisper. I couldn't find my pills. That's because they're in the kitchen, where they've always been. His voice was no longer soft. It was the voice from the boardroom, the voice that gave orders to fire entire departments. What's in your handbag, Amelia? My lipstick, she stammered. You don't wear lipstick. He stepped into the room, flipping on the light. The warm, intimate study became a cold, sterile box. His eyes were not on her. They were on the painting. It was crooked. You called me, she said, her mind racing. You blackmailed me. You forced me to come here. And you came. He took a step toward her. You came so willingly, after fighting me for days. You, the brilliant, principled Amelia Hayes. You caved so fast. It made me suspicious. He took another step. So I had my tech team do a sweep. There's a recorder in your bag, isn't there? And you weren't looking for pills, were you? He was in front of her now, close enough for her to smell the expensive scotch on his breath. What's in the bag, Amelia? He snarled, and he grabbed it. She pulled back. The strap broke. The bag fell, contents spilling across the Persian rug. a compact, a wallet, a digital recorder, and a black hard drive. He stared at it. His face, for the first time, showed not anger, but genuine, animalistic fear. He looked at her, and the last shred of the man she thought she knew vanished. His eyes were black. "You stupid bitch!" He lunged, not for the drive, but for her. He slapped her. The force of the blow was shocking. It snapped her head back, sent her stumbling. She fell hard against the edge of the mahogany desk, the corner jamming into her side. A sharp, searing pain shot through her abdomen, followed by a terrifying, warm gush down her legs. She gasped, looking down. "The baby!" Marcus froze. He looked at his hand. He looked at his wife, crumpled on the floor, her hands clutching her pregnant stomach. The horror of his own, final, irrevocable action dawned on his face. The elevator dinged in the foyer. Marcus didn't move. He was paralyzed. Rebecca Dunn walked into the study, flanked by two very large, very real security guards. She took in the scene in one sweeping glance. Amelia on the floor, the terrified, frozen Marcus, the hard drive. She didn't rush to Amelia. She pointed one perfectly manicured finger at the drive. "Mr. Harris, secure the package." One guard scooped up the drive. Then she walked to Amelia. "The second car is downstairs. We're going to Lenox Hill." "Not here. Not on his territory." "He hit me," Amelia whispered, the shock setting in. "Rebecca? The baby." "The baby will be fine," Rebecca said, her voice a steel girder. "You're going to be fine." Her other guard helped Amelia to her feet. Marcus finally spoke, his voice a hoarse whisper. This is my home. You can't." Rebecca turned to him, her face a mask of utter contempt. "You just assaulted your pregnant wife in front of 2 witnesses after she obtained evidence of your serial racketeering. You didn't just lose your wife, Mr. Thorne. You just lost your life." She nodded to the guards. "Let's go." They moved Amelia out of the room, leaving Marcus Thorne alone in his study, with his crooked painting and his empty safe. The sterile white of the hospital room was a stark contrast to the opulent prison of the penthouse. Amelia was hooked up to a fetal monitor, the rhythmic, steady whoosh 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 of her daughter's heartbeat, the only sound in the room. "You're lucky," the doctor had said. "A partial placental abruption. Very dangerous. But you got here fast. The fall seems to have stabilized. We need to keep you here. Bed rest. No stress." "No stress," Amelia had repeated, a hollow laugh catching in her throat. She had been at Lenox Hill for 36 hours. Rebecca had posted a new security team outside her door. They weren't to keep people out. They were to keep her in. The hard drive, Rebecca had informed her, was the Rosetta Stone of white-collar crime. It contained everything: the original Gallic contracts, the shell company ledgers, a secret bank account in Switzerland, and, most damning of all, audio files. Marcus, a true narcissist, had been recording his phone calls for posterity, calls with his lawyers, his bankers, and his political friends. The Southern District of New York had convened an emergency grand jury. On the morning of the 3rd day, Amelia was watching the local news when the story broke, not on the gossip page, on the front page. Billionaire Marcus Thorne, head of the Thorne Legacy Foundation, was arrested at his home early this morning. They showed footage of a grim-faced Marcus in an impeccably tailored suit, being led from his penthouse in handcuffs. The report didn't mention an affair. It didn't mention the gala. It mentioned wire fraud, racketeering, and conspiracy. A quiet knock came at her door. It wasn't a nurse. Sienna Gallic stood in the doorway, looking small and uncertain. "I saw the news. Rebecca told me what happened. Are you?" "We're fine," Amelia said, her hand resting on her stomach. Both of us. Sienna walked in, holding a small, crumpled paper bag. I don't know why I'm here. I'm so sorry, Amelia. All of this. My father, he'd be ashamed. I wanted revenge. I never wanted this. He hit me, Sienna, Amelia said, her voice quiet. He would have done it, eventually. To me, to you, to anyone who got in his way. You just showed me the truth I wasn't ready to see. The U.S. Attorney's office called me, Sienna said. They want me to testify about my father. They said the audio file from the hard drive. It has Marcus bragging about the forgery. They said, it's enough to reopen the case, even after all this time. They're adding it to the indictment. Are you going to do it? I have to, Sienna whispered. For him. For my father. And for you. She placed the paper bag on the nightstand. It's a bagel. From that place in Astoria you've probably never heard of. It's all I could think to do. Amelia looked at the bag, and then at the young woman who had, in her own misguided quest, inadvertently saved her. He used us both, Amelia said. He used your pain, and he used my name. Now, we use the truth. The next few weeks were a blur. Marcus was out on bail, a $5 million bond. His lawyers, a new, more criminal-focused team, were trying to spin the narrative. They claimed Amelia was an unstable, vindictive wife, that she had stolen the drive, that she had assaulted him. It didn't work. Rebecca released the audio file from Amelia's handbag, the one where he threatened to make her penniless. The woman-scorned narrative evaporated, replaced by the abused and blackmailed one. Marcus tried to see her. He sent flowers, he sent letters. His lawyers offered a settlement, a massive settlement. 50 million. 100 million. Just make this go away, the offer read. Amelia refused. This was no longer about money. It was about justice. It was about the name her daughter would carry. 3 weeks after the arrest, 2 weeks before the trial was set to begin, Amelia went into labor. It was fast, and it was frightening, but it was, for the first time in a year, something real. Rebecca was there, acting as her coach, shouting orders to the nurses as if they were junior associates, and at 4:17 a.m., Amelia Hayes gave birth to a healthy 6-pound, 2-ounce baby girl. She held her daughter, this tiny, perfect creature who had been with her through the fire, this little girl who had kicked her in warning at the gala, who had survived the fall. A nurse bustled in. And what's the name for the birth certificate, Ms. Hayes Thorne? Amelia looked at her daughter's perfect, sleeping face. The name is Rose, she said, her voice clear and strong. Rose Hayes. Just Hayes. 1 year later, a new gallery was opening in Chelsea. It wasn't a sterile, glass-box Billionaire's wing. It was a reclaimed warehouse, all exposed brick, warm wood, and brilliant, cascading light. The sign over the door was simple. The Hayes Foundation. Inside, the opening night was packed, but the crowd was different. It wasn't the old money, transaction-focused crowd of the Met. It was artists in paint-splattered jeans, students, activists, and real, passionate collectors. The inaugural exhibition was titled simply Integrity, and it was a roaring success. Amelia Hayes, no Thorne, stood near the entrance. She was holding her daughter Rose on her hip. The little girl with a shock of dark, curly hair was babbling, pointing at a striking 20-foot-tall metal sculpture. Amelia herself was transformed. The Ice Queen was gone. She was wearing a simple, elegant linen dress. Her hair was shorter, freer. She looked happy, not the brittle, on-camera, happy of her old life, but a deep, tired and profoundly real happiness. The past year had been a trial by fire. Marcus had, in the end, taken a plea deal. Faced with the mountain of evidence and Sienna's damning emotional testimony, he had pleaded guilty to racketeering and fraud. The judge, a woman who had clearly read the papers, had been unmoved by his pleas for leniency. He was currently serving a 12-year sentence in a medium-security federal prison. His empire had been dismantled, his assets seized and liquidated to pay back his victims, starting with the Gallic family estate. Sienna Gallic had testified. She had been brilliant, heartbreaking, and precise. With the money from the liquidation, she had established the Robert Gallic Scholarship for Business Ethics at NYU. She was, Amelia had heard, in Chicago, applying to the Attorney General's office. A young reporter, a blogger from a small arts journal, approached Amelia. "Ms. Hayes, an incredible night, an incredible comeback." Amelia smiled, shifting Rose on her hip. "Thank you. We're very proud of the work. After everything, after the trial, the betrayal," the reporter fumbled. Do you regret it? Any of it?" Amelia was silent for a moment. She looked at the art, a vibrant, chaotic, and breathtakingly honest collection of pieces by women who had been told no one too many times. Then she looked at her daughter. "I regret not seeing the truth sooner," Amelia said, her voice clear. "I regret the time I lost. But regret is a luxury, and I'm not a very luxurious person anymore." She turned to the reporter, her eyes bright and steady. "We're all taught that legacy is something you're given, or something you buy, like a name on a building. But it's not. That's just branding." She kissed the top of Rose's head. "A real legacy is something you build. Brick by painful, honest brick. It's the work you do when no one is watching. It's the integrity you keep when it costs you everything." She smiled, a real smile, one that reached her eyes. "And I," she said, "am just getting started. What a journey." From the ultimate public betrayal to the ultimate private comeback, Amelia Hayes proved that the moments that leave you speechless don't have to be the end. They can be the beginning. She didn't just get even. She got free. What did you think of her incredible decision on that stage? And what about Sienna's shocking motive? Was she a villain, a victim, or both? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you loved this story of resilience, redemption, and rebuilding, don't forget to hit that like button. Share this with a friend who needs a reminder of their own strength, and be sure to subscribe for more stories that hit you right in the heart. Thanks for watching.